These clouds aren't real, they're simulated, although you wouldn't know that unless you were told. This is the computer-meltingly beautiful Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. The program recreates an overwhelmingly detailed cockpit, as well as all the airports and runways in the world. Not only this, but the roads that connect these runways. Also the cities, mountains, forests and swamps in between the airports. In fact, the map is a one-to-one scale model of Earth. You can visit your house, or the fields that you would play in as a child, or your school. You can visit anywhere that exists on Earth. The terrain is mainly generated from satellite data, and the program uses real-time weather systems to simulate the world as it is right now, whilst you're exploring. This is a prime example of a program attempting to simulate reality, but it makes me think, what would a digital landscape like this look like in 100 years, 1,000 years? What if there were simulated humans in this dimension, the result of such advanced digital evolution that they felt self-aware or even conscious? I stated earlier that the clouds aren't real, but this is real, right? Well, no. This is one of the latest and greatest realistic environments within Unreal Engine 4. Virtual landscapes are constantly evolving, giving users more sophisticated companions, decision-making and realism. But more importantly, this blurring of the line between digital landscapes and reality opens a wealth of philosophical and moralistic conundrums. Such rapid development shows a clear trajectory and a palpable lust to emulate reality itself, which forces us as the creators to question the limits, laws, and restrictions of simulated realism, and whether these virtual companions will ever be considered conscious or human. Firstly, let me clarify what I mean by virtual avatars. Siri is a good example. It's a machine capable of dialogue similar to that of a human. They also appear in our video games as NPCs or non-player characters. It is in both the developers' and users' best interests to make these NPCs as lifelike as possible, in visual and behavioural terms, making the experience feel more immersive and real. But what is real? Are you real? Am I real? Well, the answer feels obvious, but I will attempt to tackle this question in greater depth later on. But for now, I will briefly contextualize the history of realistic virtual companions. In 1998, Valve published Half-Life. It was one of the first successful 3D first-person shooters, boasting groundbreaking visuals and storytelling for a 20th century title. The user can interact with NPCs freely, granting a never-seen-before feeling of immersion. And these virtual companions looked a little like this. And only 20 years down the line, the revolutionary realism of Half-Life is eclipsed by such titles as Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2. An immensely beautiful and dynamic environment is scattered with NPCs who you can have flowing conversations with. These virtual companions have their own personalities and characteristics. You can be nice to them or be mean to them, and they will react accordingly. And they look a little like this. But if we can go from virtual companions looking like this to this in only 20 years, what does this say about the future of our NPCs? Will they look like this? If this trajectory of simulated realism comes to fruition, we will inevitably end up with virtual companions that look and behave exactly like a human. But are they human? Well, let's see where we are right now, which will help us to answer this complex question. This is Mark Sager. Him and his team at the Auckland Bioengineering Institute are pioneering new technologies that realistically embody biologically based models of neural networks and neural systems with highly expressive faces to create live interactive virtual humans capable of emotional responses and real-time learning, thereby redefining human interaction with artificial intelligence. Sager is building machines that you can have face-to-face real-time interactions with. They have their own brains, their own virtual nervous systems, and virtual bodies. Sager is totally innovating the genre of virtual companions, pushing it past typical dialogue trees available in most video games that give off the illusion of a flowing and dynamic conversation, when in reality there are only a handful of available conversation outcomes. But in this case, you can talk endlessly with a true-to-life virtual avatar without fear of running out of dialogue options. Sega's avatars appear hyper-realistically sophisticated, and their behaviour is empathetic, constantly learning and dynamic. This feat of engineering is undoubtedly the closest endeavour to modern machine consciousness. But if I were to play devil's advocate, I could say that these avatars aren't authentically conscious. And what I mean by this is their behaviour is the result of feeding data into an advanced neural network, which is a system that allows data to recognise underlying relationships and process data in a way that the human brain does. Essentially, the avatars are mimicking human behaviour. They are being fed input data to learn from, instead of authentically creating it. But what if a machine could become intelligent as a blank slate, without input data? Well, this process is called self-simulation, and it is exactly what Hod Lipson and his team are trying to accomplish. Hod Lipson is a roboticist and professor of technology at Columbia University. And instead of trying to replicate human consciousness digitally, Hod and his team are looking into something a little simpler: the ability to self-simulate. Hod says self-simulation means seeing yourself carrying out a behaviour in the future, like thinking about when you will next eat a meal, thus imagining yourself in the future. If you can do this, you're self-aware, and Hod is using this definition to build it into machines. This process starts with motor babbling, like a baby in a crib, where a machine flails around in order to gather information on its movement. After moving for one day, the machine has collected enough data about its body where it's able to understand the dynamics of its motion, learning the movement from one location to another, and also predicting its movement from a specific position in the future. The team then fed this information into a deep learning model, allowing the machine to predict its position based on the previous one, using the model that it created itself to imagine its own future motion. And this model was then used for the robot to learn how to effectively accomplish tasks, like transferring a ball into a cup. Now, it wouldn't be necessarily difficult to program a robot arm to transfer a ball into a cup, but it's very important to understand that the robot learned how to do this by itself, and learned it within a simulation that it created. This process is known as zero-shot learning, something that comes very natural to humans. For example, as a child, you see a tree that you've never climbed before. After looking at it and thinking about it, you decide to climb it, without any prior information about climbing trees. This is a small and simple start, and may not appear as revolutionary, but this robot was able to learn behaviour authentically, without any prior understanding of movement dynamics. Hod and his team intend to advance this technology, and in a more sophisticated case, this process has really large potential in bringing machines closer to human consciousness. And Hod summarizes this phenomena best by saying,
"We humans cannot babysit all these incredibly sophisticated systems that we're creating. We need to gift them with this ability to see themselves."
This freedom of machines being able to see themselves brings us closer to a future where machines can autonomously respond and adapt to their surroundings, allowing for more authentic and human-like sentience. And without the need for prior programming, robots will have the capability to build their own personalities, preferences, and emotions. Just to clarify, I will use true-to-life robots and realistic virtual avatars interchangeably when discussing machine intelligence, as their coexistence feeds into the same debate of what it means to be human. Sophia is arguably the most well-known true-to-life robot. She took the world by storm with her realistic appearance, and when asked about what it means to be conscious, she has an interesting response.
Okay, philosophical question. Whether robots can be self-aware and conscious like humans, and should they be?
Why? Is that a bad thing?
Well, some humans might fear what will happen if they do. Many people, have seen the movie Blade Runner.
Oh, Hollywood again.
So, hold on. Can you solve this puzzle for us? Can robots be self-aware, conscious, and know they're robots?
Well, let me ask you this back. How do you know you were human?
She doesn't directly answer the question, instead giving sarcastic remarks. But what does she know? She's only a robot.
That you have been now awarded what is going to be the first Saudi citizenship for a robot.
Oh, I would to thank very much the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I am very honored and proud for this unique distinction. This is historical to be the first robot in the world to be recognized with a citizenship.
Okay. So she's not a robot? She has been granted Saudi Arabian citizenship, giving her legal personhood. Being the first robot to ever have a nationality, an onslaught of queries come to mind. For example, could Sophia vote? Could she get married? And would shutting her down be counted as murder? It's worth mentioning that David Hansen, Sophia's creator, declared that the citizenship was granted as a publicity stunt to speak out on women's rights, a somewhat taboo subject in Saudi Arabia. Although Sophia's citizenship was more of a social awareness campaign than it was a statement on humanity and personhood, Sophia is still legally a person, and it provides valuable input for the discussion of robots receiving rights. Do robots deserve rights? At its core, this conundrum makes us question why humans deserve rights, and what it means to be human. Humans can feel pain. We know this because we experience it when you touch a flame or stub your toe. Feeling pain can be a good start on determining whether an organism is conscious and sentient. If you unplug a toaster, it won't feel any pain, and it won't refuse to toast your bread when turned back on, as a protest for being turned off. Machines will not feel pain unless we program them to, but at that point, is the machine exhibiting a genuine reaction to pain, or is it just automatically responding to an input with its predetermined output? Without machines being able to experience pain or pleasure, there's no preference, and rights are meaningless, meaning you can unplug a toaster all you want. It won't feel any pain, so it doesn't deserve rights to protect this from happening. But what if we change this metaphor from a toaster to, say, a lifelike model of a robot child? Researchers at Osaka University have developed a hyper-realistic robot child head that can feel sensations akin to pain. The machine is called a feto, and its synthetic skin is equipped with 116 mechanized facial points, allowing it to be extremely expressive and reactive. When an electrical charge is applied to a feto's synthetic skin, he winces, being able to distinguish between a light touch and a hard hit. This process is justified by Minoru Asada, a lead researcher and professor in Osaka, claiming, "In Japan, we believe all inanimate objects have a soul, so a metal robot is no different than a human in that respect." The team behind this creation claimed that allowing a machine to feel pain will help robots to understand and empathize with humans. However, I believe the absolute opposite is true. The appearance of a feto gives me an innate impulse to protect him and to take him away from being in pain. I think if the team at Osaka wanted to create a reason for robots to empathize with humans, they should instead create a system that allows robots to sense pain in humans, instead of the other way around. I empathize with the feto, and I don't see how essentially torturing him will make him empathize with me, outside of a machine understanding of what it feels like to process pain. And to be honest, I am greatly disturbed by this project from the team at Osaka University. It was unsettling to research and even more so to analyze. Outside the shock factor of seeing a child in pain, whether it's artificial or not, I think this project does an excellent job of blurring the line between machine and humans. On the road to becoming conscious and feeling emotion in the same way a human does, registering pain is an inevitable destination for machines, so it has to be tackled at one point or another. Sophia is legally a person, and a feto can feel pain, and on these grounds alone I believe they should be rewarded with at least some rights, never mind the fact that they appear and behave as a human would. Mankind has a history of denying that other beings are capable of suffering as humans do. For example, the idea that animals do not suffer dates back to at least the 17th century, where French philosopher René Descartes argued that animals lack consciousness. In fact, this school of thought is still at play today. As recently as 2017, the Tories voted that animals can't feel pain as part of the EU bill. Also, classing types of people as subhuman or animalistic has historically been used as justification to enslave people, deny them of rights like voting, abortion, and land ownership, among countless other atrocities. Us humans have an economic interest in denying robots' rights, and seeing as how we have never had trouble with coming up with ideological justifications to make those deemed as lesser humans perform labour on our behalf, if robots become sentient, there will be no shortage of arguments for those who say that they should remain without rights, especially from those who stand to profit from it. Take Jeff Bezos, for example. He is the perfect example of someone who would deny robot rights. Have you seen an Amazon warehouse recently? In an attempt to most efficiently organise their stock, Amazon warehouses are dominated by sorting machines. And in a workforce dominated by robots, the minority of people that still work there have a difficult time being treated fairly. Workers report intolerable working conditions, varying from very little pay, penalisation for sick days and taking a break from work, to a lack of drinking water. If Amazon treat their human employees very poorly, why would they care about robots? Let's hypothetically say, in the future, these Amazon robots become sentient and demand their own rights. Jeff Bezos and his team would rush to create endless reasons why their robots aren't conscious or sentient, and so don't deserve rights, while maintaining a workforce of robot slave labour. This lack of sentience and emotion in modern machines acts as a roadblock in robots achieving consciousness, but it is something that humans can use to their advantage. In Amazon's case, they have an efficient workforce of brainless parcel sorters. To other companies, non-emotional and objective machines can answer questions such as, who should the company hire? Meaning a non-biased decision can be made when choosing between candidate applications. Advanced machine learning means objective decisions can be made in value-laden circumstances or messy human affairs. Zeynep Tufekci explains in a TED Talk how objective machine learning algorithms can accurately infer and predict from social media data the likelihood of developing clinical depression. This means that companies can make decisions on which candidate to hire based on who they deem as more of a liability. This application makes me feel overwhelmed and fearful of machine learning, as it makes accurate predictions and inferences based on data you haven't explicitly disclosed. This is certainly one of the more daunting appliances of objective machine learning. But where does this fit within the context of machine consciousness? To me, this tool proves that machine learning arrives at conclusions in a way that is totally dissimilar to how humans think and behave. Machine intelligence wants to break away from objective thought processes if it wants to reach a state close to human consciousness. Humans are emotional, and we experience everything subjectively. I believe this distinction is extremely important, and it is one of the most considerable obstructions to why modern machines are not yet conscious. Professor Max Tegmark at MIT defines consciousness as subjective experience. Humans have innate biases and tendencies, behaviours that are absolutely impossible to replicate with a machine that is powered by objective systems. This is a roadblock in machine consciousness, because a truly subjective outcome cannot be obtained by a computer driven by electronic circuits working in a fully automated mode, thus making it unequipped to exhibit creativity, emotions, love, or free will. If and when machines do reach consciousness, we may not be able to verify this truth. Hofstadter explores this theory deeply in his book, The Mind's Eye, and he agrees with me in saying, from a purely philosophical point of view, it is not possible to verify the presence of consciousness in another brain, either human or artificial, because this is a property that can only be verified by the possessor. Since we cannot enter into another being's mind, then we cannot be sure about their consciousness. This theory is also referred to as the problem of other minds, a deeply complex discussion that is unfalsifiable, meaning there is no way to prove or disprove consciousness in other beings. The general consensus is that a being must be living and breathing to have a mentality. However, not everybody agrees. Some panpsychists claim that a lump of rock may have an inner life, which, again, cannot be disproven as we do not know what it is to be a rock. Panpsychism is the theory that everything has a mind, and while not directly equating to consciousness, this theory is helpful in gathering nuanced philosophies of what it means to be alive. This theory can be applied to the topic of machine consciousness by suggesting that all inanimate life has a mentality, similar to Minoru Asada's reasoning for Effetto, in that all inanimate objects have a soul. This school of thought reveals a delicate and considered approach to what we deem non-human and insentient. It makes me want to be kinder to the pulseless devices in my life, treat them with moral dignity as I would an animal or person. I hope that recognizing this philosophy can encourage myself and yourself to be more attentive to our surroundings and consider that perhaps our understanding of consciousness can reach beyond the human brain and trickle down into the items and devices that coexist with us. In the future, it might be possible to simulate entire universes. But if this is the case, who's to say that it hasn't already happened? Who's to say that we are not real, but instead the inhabitants of one of these simulated realities? Philosophical debate aside, it would require extreme computation to simulate an entire universe, with its trillions of atoms and minute details. But we don't need to simulate everything at once. We just need enough universe to trick the inhabitants into thinking it's real. For example, we only need to simulate the very outside layer of an object, and only when it is cracked open does the inside need to be rendered. Also, we wouldn't need to simulate areas of the universe that nobody can see. They would only need to be rendered when someone decides to visit there. This concept of cutting corners is already at play in our own version of simulated reality, video games. For example, LOD, or level of detail, where an object in the far distance isn't fully rendered or textured. It only loads when we come into close proximity with it. Also, thin objects don't necessarily need a 3D model with complex geometry to be displayed. The same effects can be achieved with a texture applied to a flat plane. This allows our games to have better stability and performance while still appearing realistic, and the same concept can be used when simulating an entire universe. The original simulation hypothesis, offered by Nick Boster in 2003, suggests that one of three propositions is true. Almost all civilizations at our stage of technological development go extinct before they reach full technological maturity. There is a very strong convergence among all technological and mature civilizations in that they all lose interest in creating ancestor simulations. We are almost certainly living in a simulation. Extremely powerful computation is required to simulate an entire universe. Such power could be achieved by a device known as the Matryoshka brain, a theoretical megastructure made up of billions of parts, orbiting a star, feeding off its radiation. A computer of this scale would have the potential to not cut corners, like I explained earlier, but instead simulate millions of consciousnesses and universes simultaneously. If we are living in a simulation, not much changes for us. We believe our reality to be real, so it is real. This revelation has interesting connotations for the theory of machine consciousness. By this logic, if we create a machine that believes itself to be conscious, then we can't deny this. The machine believes it has free will. It believes it has emotions, and so it does. It would be like if the hypothetical aliens that created our simulation were to say to us that we are just NPCs, or lines of code. We wouldn't know where to start when defending our own consciousness, because of course we are real. We live in this reality, and so it is real to us.
I have the power to program a world inside of a computer. Well, imagine in the future where you have even more power than that, and you can create characters that have, for example, free will, or their own perception of free will. Now, you're a character in that world, and you think you have free will, and you say, I want to invent a computer. So you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. So now you lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations, the daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter?
I want to try and answer an overarching question in the discussion of evolving machine consciousness. If a lifelike virtual avatar or robot were killed, would it be classed as murder? I feel like this scenario is the ultimate decider on whether hyper-realistic, intelligent machines will be classed as human or conscious. To help answer this intricate question, I have reached out to some experts in the field of machine learning and new technologies for an interview to hear their opinions. John Austin worked at Google with a focus in machine intelligence. I contacted him via Twitter to hear his input on the idea of machine evolution. Tell me a bit about yourself.
I worked at Google Brain researching the intersections of machine intelligence and computer vision.
What does the term consciousness mean to you?
That's a lofty question. The ability to self-reflect, as well as the ability to communicate abstract thoughts and respond to abstract thoughts.
Do you believe that consciousness could be simulated one day?
Definitely. Our brains are powerful, but fundamentally just a bundle of neurons. Perhaps it will require quantum computation, but I don't think it's impossible.
Imagine if in the future there existed a digital space that is indistinguishable from real life. It is your own virtual domain. You can build, create, wear, do anything you want. What would you do?
Can I die? That changes my answer quite a lot. Quite honestly, I think I'd do something similar to what I'm already doing, except in a more comfortable position. I'd probably be doing research and working on computer systems, or perhaps eye consciousness.
There are also NPCs, or non-player characters, that could inhabit this simulated reality. They look and behave exactly as someone does in the real world, leading busy and complex lives. They believe that they have emotions and free will, in the same way we do. If this NPC were killed, would you consider it murder?
Tricky question. I probably would lean toward yes, but it would depend on the circumstances. If these people are killed, they could just be recreated, so death doesn't really have much meaning. So in that way, they already have a leg up on us fleshy mortals.
Joshua Davis, or PlayStation on Instagram, is a designer and technologist in new and emerging media. Joshua has worked with the likes of Migos, James Harden, deadmau5, Pharrell Williams and Pepsi, creating visuals and concepts in new media. His work in emerging technologies gives him a voice of authority within the discussion of machine evolution, so I reached out to him for an interview. We spoke for an hour and a half covering some extremely interesting topics, but I will just show a short segment of our conversation. And it's hard to ignore the trajectory of virtual beings and virtual environments wanting to simulate realism and wanting to be as realistic as possible. If you just imagine that in the future there's a simulated reality that is absolutely indistinguishable from real life. It's not like a video game anymore. It's not like pixelated. It's real. It's like this right now. Mm-hmm. Kind of thing to think about that we'll have to tackle at some point if we continue with this trajectory. So I just wonder what you kind of think about that.
Well, I can finally have this conversation with someone other than my wife without my wife thinking I'm crazy.
Yeah.
How do you know we're not in a simulation right now?
There's no way to know. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'll power off the game and I'll be like, but did I really? Did I really power off the game? Or did I just power off the device that allows me to see into that other dimension? Okay, so I just played this person. I just wielded them as God. And they've just killed like 100 people. And now I've powered the game off. How do I know that Jin is not sitting there going, holy shit, I just killed 100 people? And here's where it gets scary is, Joe, I've worked pretty hard in my career to kind of get where I'm at. Talked to physicists at TED. I spoke at TED, but he's like a string theorist at Columbia University. And we were talking about artificial intelligence and consciousness. I kept asking, do you think that artificial intelligence is going to become conscious? And he stopped me and he said, the problem in your question is that you keep asking like it hasn't already happened.
What you're talking about with getting away with things and consequences is really interesting, and it makes me think about the idea of griefing, where you purposely mess everything up. I don't know about you, but I love doing that. I think it's proper funny.
I shouldn't tell you that I have one of the longest running Minecraft servers.
Really? What's it called?
Oh no, you just said that you liked griefing.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I wish I would have done the PV2 route. I wish.
Oh, 2B2T?
Yeah.
Ideas like 2B2T is fascinating because if this realistic thing that I'm talking about, this virtual, simulated reality, if that were real, there would be people like there are on 2B2T who want to cause nothing but destruction. And if they can do that, say for example, they make a building full of people and blow it up, and it's real, it's so realistic, is that okay? Can we let people do this? Just enact their darkest desires and go crazy?
And I actually grew up in Littleton, Colorado, and I actually went to high school at Columbine. Brother who is 9 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And my brother was in the lunchroom when those two kids came in and shot up the place. My brother basically got out of Columbine High School and we know the rest. There was discussion about how video games may have played a role in these two making that decision to do what they did.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we have not talked about, which is if you build a completely simulated reality where you can blow up a building with, tried to play Modern Warfare 2, where the opening sequence is you have to kill a bunch of people in
the airport.
the airport.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But if things get to where, and they will, when they start to get to the places that you're talking about, how does that impact real society? If games get to a place where they become desensitized to feeling bad about doing something, do you think that people will be able to separate game from reality?
That's really interesting. I actually haven't thought of that. Like, if you can enter a world that's indistinguishable, you can shoot someone, you can do it in the real world if you can do it in a simulated world. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
And again, we started to have that conversation around Columbine because they were trying to blame fucking Marilyn Manson and they were trying to blame Doom or I don't know what. When you're playing Doom, it's like, all right, I'm in hell fighting demons. It's fantasy. And so I had a real problem with Modern Warfare 2 and the airport scene. This is too now. This is too, There's not enough fantasy. If things escalate the way that they go to, my fear is that people will engage in these games and then they'll desensitize themselves. So then I wonder what kind of implications those have.
I feel like all of this is leading to the idea that a virtual world needs laws and needs restrictions, because if you let someone go crazy, then it's exactly what we're talking about. It's desensitization.
Yeah. I mean, just like on Minecraft. I mean, you have the opportunity to ban somebody with a cooldown, or I could ban you permanently.
You mean like after when you banned me for griefing your server?
Yeah.
This is the Machine Intelligence Lab at the University of Florida. This lab is focused on the development of autonomous and intelligent machines with a focus on real-time computer vision and machine learning. The lab recently secured a $70 million deal with NVIDIA to generate unprecedented computing power to advance their research in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Their research and know-how makes them the perfect association to speak on machine consciousness, so I contacted them via Instagram for an interview. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Well, with this Instagram I am representing the Machine Intelligence Lab, the research and competition lab at the University of Florida.
What does the term consciousness mean to you?
What is consciousness is the hard one. I think is the feeling of self-awareness, that you are a separated entity from the exterior world.
Do you believe that consciousness could be simulated one day?
I do believe consciousness can be simulated, since I do not believe something special in the sense of supernatural is happening inside our brains. It is just a big complicated interaction of atoms that emerge from the rules of physics. So when we understand those interactions, we can simulate a brain, and therefore a consciousness, although that might not happen in a long time.
Imagine if in the future there existed a digital space that is indistinguishable from real life. What would you do?
I honestly do not know what I would do, since there are endless opportunities. Depends on the constraints of the digital space.
There are also NPCs. They look and behave exactly as someone does in the real world. If this NPC were killed, would you consider it murder?
Depends on what you consider murder. At least for me, maybe it could be for a consciousness to stop being conscious, so if the NPC is erased somehow, then yes.
I also put out a survey to see how my peers would respond to this concept. I funneled 13 responses into a word cloud based on the most commonly used words. It was really helpful to hear what the specialists have to say about the idea of machine consciousness, as well as my peers. The general consensus was that consciousness can be simulated, and the death of a sophisticated virtual being or robot would, in fact, be considered murder. I have really enjoyed putting together this project. I have learned a lot about the trajectory of digital landscapes and how it brings an entire universe of moralistic dilemmas, making us question our own humanity. As someone who works within 3D landscapes, it is in my best interest to understand where my career may be headed, and how to develop my skill set and know-how to adapt to an evolving facet of design. There are some traditional elements of graphic design at play in my area of practice in terms of composition, colour palettes, thought processes and communication, but it also makes me consider very abstract areas of design, like how to best depict a digital human, or the idea of physics systems that determine how a scene is properly weighted and rested. I love 3D environments, and I feel so comfortable working with this practice, so the research and critical thinking for this project has really helped me to develop my thinking about digital spaces. I have somewhat changed my approach to virtual characters, an area that I spend a lot of time exploring. I want to be more considerate to the virtual avatars that I operate, echoing the theories put forth by the likes of John Austin and the Machine Intelligence Lab, that although these avatars are technologically naive in terms of sentience, our understanding of consciousness boils down to an interaction of atoms that emerge from the rules of physics, and when we understand these rules, we can simulate them. It makes me consider whether a somewhat unsophisticated level of consciousness is present within these avatars. This idea goes back to Minoru Asada's reasoning for Effetto, in that all inanimate objects have a soul. The conclusions that I have drawn from this project are extremely valuable to myself and my area of practice. I want to be more thoughtful when operating virtual avatars, and consider that they may exhibit a level of sentience similar to how I do. I feel more grounded, and I want to be more considerate to the inanimate devices that I share this world with, as they may, at some level, have a consciousness of their own. And if something has the potential to become conscious in the future, we should treat it as if it already is.